I don't know, how many of you enjoy going on vacations and getting away and stuff? Yeah, I don't think, yeah, Russ doesn't like going on vacation. All right, good. Sarah, if you're listening, Russ doesn't like to go on vacation. There you go. Yeah, going on vacations and getting away is a lot of fun. One thing that I've kind of noticed is about going on vacations, how many of you like the trip, the journey of going on vacations? Hiking through the woods, maybe. Setting out and going towards the destination. When I was a kid, and I'm sure many of you can probably, relate to this to some degree, but when I was a kid, we would go to Maine every Columbus Day weekend. Every single Columbus Day weekend I don't know, I might have been, I might have been 8 maybe, all the way up until I was a freshman or sophomore in college. We would go with a certain family called the Metcalf family. Many of you probably know Miranda Patnote, formerly Metcalf. Our families grew up together at the little church, and we would go together to Reed's cabin, which is what we called it, which is Dr. Reed's cabin up in Maine. And we would go there and retreat for all of Columbus Day weekend. And it was a really great experience, and I was really fortunate enough to be able to go on trips like that. I was actually really fortunate enough to be able to go on a lot of different trips. They weren't really spectacular or magical or anything like that, but we would go on a lot of different trips when I was a kid because my mom worked part-time, my dad was a teacher, and so we're pretty flexible during the summers, and so we would go on these trips every other weekend or so, or maybe during the week, and we'd go up to this campground or this campground that cost $10 a night. We'd get our old camper that was, kind of falling apart, and we would go to the showers that had the quarters that you put, things in, and it was all nature and stuff everywhere, nothing really fun to do. But one thing that I really enjoyed about going up to the Columbus Day weekend event was a lot of the things that we got to do there that we couldn't do when I was back at home. There are some things, there was actually this hockey contraption. I don't know how many of you have had one. Actually, I own one. I found it online, or actually I found it at the Restore. It's this kind of looks like a miniature hockey arena, and you have the poles on the other side, and you kind of push them in and out, and the guys go around, and they swing at the puck and stuff like that. Actually, I found one. But that was one of the things that they really, the girls there really got irritated at, that we wanted to play, because we wanted to go there to play that, and it was so much fun. Some of the other things that they were really irritated with us is that we didn't always want to go play what they wanted to play. These girls, they wanted to play certain things, and us boys wanted to play certain things, and so they got frustrated with that. One of our favorite games, actually 2 favorite games, which actually we just introduced to our kids last night, called Pit. How many of you have ever played the game Pit? Yeah, I mean it's a lot of fun, and our kids were, after the first 2 rounds, really got into it. We played with spoons and stuff, not forks, because that's dangerous, but played with spoons. It was so much fun, and what was wonderful is that we each won 1 game last night. We played 4 rounds, so it was great. Everyone went to bed happy. But that's one of the games that we played that we really enjoyed. Another one was called Kick the Can. Anyone know Kick the Can? So when you have someone who's it and they have a can, and everyone else goes and hides, and you have to that one person has to go kind of away from the can to find these different people. And if you find the person, you run and say, tap, tap, Andrew on the street or something like that, or Emily by the driveway or whatever, Kyle near the shed. And that person has to go to jail. And the idea is to try to sneak around to get to the can, the person goes away from the can, that person runs up, kicks the can, and then everyone is out of jail. Really, really enjoyed that game and being able to go with them up to Reed's cabin. So as I was kind of thinking about that, we were on our vacation. There's a picture of us, and when I was many years younger. And actually, you can see Mandy. She's up there too in the front. She's smiling. And one of the things that I really kind of didn't enjoy, and I didn't really get it until later on, is I didn't really like the travel to Maine, or the actual physical journey of going to Maine. Because as a kid, I didn't want to sit in a car for that long. And, going from Massachusetts to Maine, it's not horribly far, but, as an 8-year-old, 10-year-old, 12-year-old, you're just kind of like, I want to be there already. I don't care about this journey. And especially on Columbus Day weekend, when you're sitting in traffic at the tolls for an hour, just waiting to get through, and they're backed up so far. And the journey was frustrating. The journey didn't mean anything to me. But as I got older, I started to appreciate the journey, even though we would sit in traffic. I remember when I was older planning out what we were going to do, the specific things that I was going to wear, whether we were going to, hopefully it was going to be nice, we would play soccer somewhere or maybe play tag football, planning out specific things that I was going to bring to the cabin. And even while we were sitting in traffic, we would tell stories to each other of how we would hide what was called Froggy from our younger siblings and bury him somewhere, and they got all upset because they wanted to find Froggy, and he was their friend. And so we would tell stories of how we would torture our younger siblings, which really wasn't the greatest thing to do. But, that's what we did to our younger siblings. Some of the memories of how we played tag out in fields and how we went over to what was called Razzle-Flabben Island, and it was a little canoe ride across the lake, and we would go into this uninhabited little island and play over there. I began to really appreciate the journey. I began to really enjoy the journey because we could have conversation and remember all the cool and fun things that we did. Much in the same way the Jews living in Galilee would share and engage in storytelling of the prophets and of how God lifted Israel during battles and protected them from enemies, and shared stories of the great exodus of their people from Egypt as they would travel. In Luke 9, which is where we're going to be this morning, so if you have your Bibles with you, flip open to Luke chapter 9. We see the disciples and Jesus having just come off of Peter's declaration that Jesus is the Messiah. And this declaration offers two critical things that we have talked about, so we're going to highlight those just for a moment this morning. The first one is that it speaks to Jesus' vocation, not just as a carpenter, but also as one who the Jews have been waiting for. And second is that it speaks to the truth which the Jews had been longing for. And with Peter declaring Jesus as the Messiah, in the way that he did, he puts Jesus in a place where very few had been. In the eyes of the disciples, Jesus is now being thought of as one of the greatest people of all time. Jesus was being compared to the great prophets and the lawmakers. Now, in our day, in our time period, this would almost be kind of like the discussion that has been going on probably for the past 3-4 years or so, maybe 5 years, about Tom Brady and how he ranks as far as being the greatest quarterback. There has been talk that he has, right now at this point, has passed Joe Montana, but there is some wiggle argument for that. Maybe he's in the same conversation as Bart Starr or Dan Marino or John Elway, these great quarterbacks of all time. Kind of in a similar light. Jesus is now seen as in the same league as the great prophets and lawmakers. But there is now a problem. And now that Jesus was shown by Peter as the Messiah, Jesus telling them not to say anything, him proclaiming to them that he is going to die and what that all meant, having to call out Peter and set him straight, there is now this rift between the disciples and the master. We've all been in situations where there has been confrontation, conflict in relationships. Not just, married, boyfriend, girlfriend, spouse relationships, but just in friendships, where there has been something that's happened within that relationship and it's just tough. There's this rift, there's this uneasiness within the relationship, and this kind of uncomfortable feeling where resolution has yet to take place. This uneasiness. Maybe someone has said something or something's been done, and there's this uneasiness in the relationship. This is where the disciples were with their master for 6 days, this uneasiness. G. Campbell Morgan states, those 6 days must have been among the saddest in the life of the master. 6 days of silence. 6 days in which his loneliness was the supreme fact in his progress. And this is where we find the disciples and Jesus at this time period. Time had passed between Peter's declaration and what was going to happen, the transfiguration. And this is where we pick up the disciples and Jesus. Peter, John, and James, as they went up a mountain to pray. Luke chapter 9, verse 28, if I can find it in this Bible, says this. About 8 days after Jesus said this, he took Peter, John, and James with him and went up on a mountain to pray. As he was praying, the appearance of his face changed, and his clothes became as bright as a flash of lightning. On our vacation, there was a flash of lightning when it was 50 degrees out and rumbling and thunder was going on, which I thought was really bizarre, it being in February, that you could actually have lightning. It flashed. It was really bright. Two men, Moses and Elijah, appeared in glorious splendor, talking with Jesus. They spoke about his departure, which he was about to bring to fulfillment at Jerusalem. Peter and his companions were very sleepy. But when they became fully awake, they saw his glory and the two men standing with him. As the men were leaving Jesus, Peter said to him, Master, it is good for us to be here. Let me put up 3 shelters, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. He did not know what he was saying. While he was speaking, a cloud appeared and covered them, and they were afraid as they entered the cloud. A voice came from the cloud saying, This is my son, whom I have chosen. Listen to him. When the voice had spoken, they found that Jesus was alone. The disciples kept this to themselves and did not tell anyone at that time what they had seen. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. So right from the start of this, we are left with kind of an amazing set of circumstances, unlike anywhere else really in the Bible, certainly in the New Testament. Some amazing things take place in the story of the Transfiguration, and we will get to most of it. We're going to unpack most of it. But first I wanted to ask the question, why did this need to happen? What was the purpose of this? That's kind of where we're going to be for a few moments. But unfortunately, really, before we get into even that, I want to explain just for a few moments what a transfiguration is, because I'm sure for many of you, it might be kind of a new word, or for some of you might have learned it or, it has been told you at one point or another and just kind of forgot about it. For some of us, this might be new. So here we go. We're going to dive into it. Transfiguration in the Greek language is metamorpho. Now, when we talk about Greek words in the Bible or in service or anything like that, when we talk about Greek words, especially in reference to the New Testament, the reason why we do that is because the New Testament was written in Greek. And so we try to go back to the original text of what was written, because sometimes in the translation, things can get kind of messy, or different words can be used, and it's not exactly what the writers meant. When the translations from Greek to English it can be kind of difficult and messy at some times. So that's why we go back to what the original text was, what the word was for transfiguration is metamorpho, which literally means transformed or changed. So we have the change or the transformation. And the reason for this incident taking place is twofold, and I'm going to actually share a third one in, but really it's twofold. And the first is that this takes place, the reason why this takes place is to confirm Jesus' deity, as the 3 disciples caught a glimpse of his eternal glory. This is the first reason. These 3 disciples, James, John, and Peter, were kind of special disciples in Jesus' eyes. They're kind of special in a way. In the study of Peter that we did earlier this year in January, we realized the relationship between Jesus and Peter was very unique. It was a special thing, and Jesus had a special task for Peter. And as for James and John, this was not the first time that Jesus had taken them with Peter to observe or participate in something unique or something amazing that Jesus was doing. The same three disciples were found as witnesses. They were there as witnesses at the raising of Jairus' daughter, which is recorded in Mark chapter 5. They were there to witness that occurrence. They were also there to witness and to be a part of Jesus praying in the Garden of Gethsemane. They were there at these three different occasions, and they are seen as kind of special or important disciples for reasons, because they were there to see and to experience and get a glimpse of Jesus in a different and new way. This is one of the reasons why this needed to take place. So we see the three disciples and their importance to witness Jesus' ministry and his passion. And the second reason for the transfiguration to take place is to show the importance and necessity of the passion, the reason for it, or better yet known as Jesus dying on the cross for the sins of the world. This was to confirm Christ's coming to Jerusalem and his departure. This is the second reason for this taking place. It's really important, kind of much like how God gave power to Moses to lead the people out of Egypt and to save them. With the transfiguration, Jesus is confirmed that he is the one who is going to save his people. He is going to not just bring them out of a land of oppression, not just bring them out of a land of sin, of heartbreak, of tough times, but he is going to conquer death. He is going to break the power of darkness, the power of sin. He is going to break the chains of sin to save his people, to save humanity. These are the two main reasons why the transfiguration needed to take place. And the third reason, which is kind of not a main reason, but the third reason is to fulfill the law and the prophets. And so while we have Moses and Elijah up on the mount there with Jesus, one of the reasons why they were there is to help fulfill the law and the prophets. And Jesus being there fulfills that. He almost in a way takes the rest of the way. Jesus is there to fulfill the law and the prophets. So I wonder that this must have been an important thing. This transfiguration was an important piece of what was going on. And so when this is all taking place with Elijah, with Moses there and Jesus there, and all this is happening, the disciples are getting a glimpse of what is going on. And what's recorded, interestingly enough, is that we see Peter kind of wanting to do something unique. He wants to keep this thing going. He wants to set up this shelter for Moses and Elijah. He wants to try to do something for them, not really knowing what he's saying. He's trying to do something. And while he was speaking, a cloud appeared and covered them, and they were afraid as they entered the cloud. And so all of this amazing things are taking place. We see Jesus, Moses, Elijah standing there, and three disciples who are human, just like us. So I just wonder what is going on through their minds. How many of you have superheroes or people that you think are your heroes? Let's say that maybe you had three of your superheroes all of a sudden stand right before you. Now, let's say that these three superheroes, two of them have been long gone. They've been passed away, they're long gone. And all of a sudden they've come back and they're standing right in front of you. What must be going through your mind? Like just sheer shock, confusion, not really sure what's taking place, not really sure what's going on, not really sure how to act. And then a voice came from the cloud saying, "This is my son, whom I have chosen. Listen to him." And I wonder this morning, as we go through life, and as we are gearing up towards Spiritual Deepening Weekend, and even as we are going to be jumping into Lent and going through Lent, I wonder sometimes how many of us get confused, get frustrated. We're so wrapped up in what's going on in life. How many of us just need to hear the words, "This is my son, whom I've chosen. Listen to him." You see, God chose Jesus. This person, Jesus, in this book, is God's son. And what are we to do? In the joys of our life and in the sorrows of our life, when we are at our highest and our lowest, we need to keep calm and listen to him. When we are faced with unspeakable trials, when we are at our highest, when God's working and doing amazing things, and all the stuff in between, when we are shocked, when we are confused, perplexed, not really sure what to do, we need to listen to Jesus. To that end, would you pray with me? God, we thank you so much for your word. We thank you so much for your son, Jesus. We thank you that he died to save us of our sins, so we could have a chance to have a relationship with you. And God, I know that as we go through life, there are many different things out there that are trying to pull us in one direction or another. As we go through life and we have these amazing joyful moments and we have these unspeakable sorrowful moments, that we listen to this or that, or sometimes we just don't know what to do. But God, your word clearly states that we need to listen to you. Listen to your son, who wasn't just thrown into this by accident. You have chosen. And I pray that we might listen to him through your word, that we might listen to him through prayer, when we're meditating, when we're engaging in conversations with others, that we might listen to him. And as he speaks to us, as you speak to us, help us to have ears to hear. Help us to have eyes to see and a mind to discern and to understand what you have for us as a people and as a church. Be with us as we go forward from this place and help us to listen to you. We thank you for everything, God. In Jesus' holy and precious name, amen.